So the first thing to write a truck estimate, an evaluation form, any good appraiser, they're going to fill out an evaluation form first to get all the conditions, the options, obviously the ID, the mileage. They start with this. After they fill out the condition and options report, then they start looking at the damage. Then they write their notes on the estimate. So then in the event, if the truck is a total loss, or if it's repairable and they got to know what the value is. This truck, this is a 2007 International 9400. Depending on the motor that's in it, this truck can be worth anywhere from $9,000 to $20,000.
25 grand.
Ronald,
give or take.
This truck was what?
23 for it.
23. What motor does it have in it?
Cat.
It's got a Cat. That motor it makes the truck worth a little bit more. Now, if this truck had a if you had
like an ISX that could go
less value, not worth as much or worth more on ISX?
It depends on where you are. It's probably going to be worth less. The Cat's a high demand engine.
Yeah.
Cat's a high demand
engine. Makes it
engine.
more expensive. So, and drivers like Ronald, they'll always know what's in their truck. You know, they'll know when it was rebuilt, what they put into it. So, got to talk with the driver. So, I'll let Zach take it from here. We're going to ID the truck, right? So you're the appraiser. You come up to the truck, what's the first thing? So let's say we get a loss from ProSight Insurance and they say right front damage. We go out, this is how we'll do the estimate on this truck. So
first thing you're going to do before you look at any damage, assess anything on the vehicle, you always want to look at the VIN number. The VIN number is always going to be either on the inside of the door or on the B-pillar on the driver's side. You want to make sure, especially with trucks, because so many times you run into having a fleet where you could have 50 trucks on a lot that all have right front damage. Right. You want to make sure you're actually writing the correct vehicle. So you can go in, I don't know if this is mobile or not, but you can go in, you can actually look at the VIN number, and you're normally looking at the last 6 of the VIN. The first 10 to 11 characters normally will be pretty generic. It's the last 6 of the VIN that will truly identify this truck versus another truck. So as Ronald told us, we have a Cat engine in here. What do you have, a 10-speed transmission?
Automatic.
10-speed auto?
This is an Allison tranny?
Yes.
It's an Allison, 10-speed an Allison, so this is probably an Allison 1000.
It's going to be, I think it's an Eaton.
So let's go do the ID on it.
So the 2 places you're commonly going to have your VIN tag, you'll have it in here on your B-pillar. It's a sticker. Unfortunately, it is a sticker, and on older vehicles it can wear off. On some trucks you'll have a small plaque that'll be riveted under the door frame that will have the last 6 of the VIN, or it could be stamped in the frame rail based on the manufacturer, so you'll have to check. Once you've ID'd the VIN, you can hop in, double check the mileage.
How many miles
the
does this thing have? How many miles? I would guess, if this is a 2007, I'm going to guess this truck has about 700,000 on it. About 1 million miles this truck has on it.
They go, they go up to almost 2 though.
Yeah.
999,000.
999,000 miles on this truck. But it runs good. Well, you did an in-frame rebuild, and we're going to talk about that. So that's the difference on trucks. 1 million miles on a 2000.
Just breaking it in.
My 2007 Prius is, I've driven a lot, and I've only got...
I don't think that thing was in good shape after 1 million miles. So you can go through, you want to verify the VIN, the year, the make, the model. We've confirmed the engine and transmission with the driver. Looking at this, in regards to the engine, the transmission, he stated that there was an engine overhaul, so he can always provide that information. So it was about 6-7 months ago, towards the beginning of the year.
Ronald, you did an in-frame rebuild. What did you pay for the in-frame rebuild?
The truck actually was $18,000, and the extra balance for 23. The $5,000 was for the engine.
Was to do an in-frame rebuild. So that's right. So the truck was 18. They said we'll do an in-frame rebuild, add an extra $5,000.
Okay.
So you'll see that like on an evaluation. So if a driver says, let's say you're adjusting a claim, and they say, well, yeah, we did an evaluation. Let's say we ran a DCI. Our appraiser took all the notes, ran a DCI. DCI came back with $18,000. And you go to settle the claim, and the driver says, no, or the owner of the truck says, no, hey, I just paid 23 grand for it. Those are the things that are gonna make the difference. So make sure all the options, okay, what kind of tranny do you have? What kind of engine do you have? Let's make sure this is all correct. And then, oh, I did an in-frame rebuild, I paid 5 grand. Or maybe it was an out-of-frame rebuild where they take the whole motor. In-frame rebuild, they're actually rebuilding the bottom end of the motor while it's still in the truck. They don't take the whole thing out. Complete overhaul. So a complete overhaul is going to be, in-frame might be anywhere from $5,000 to $8,000.
Depending on what you do.
Yeah,
about 40 hours of labor.
Yeah, a complete overhaul or a reman engine for one of these, what about 18,000?
Probably somewhere around 10.
Yeah.
10, 11 grand.
On a Cummins, yeah, depending.
On an older engine, yeah.
Yeah, good.
The transmission also can be rebuilt, so you need to ask about that. Take that into consideration. There's going to be smaller options, such as like wheels, whether they're aluminum versus steel. The fronts are aluminum on this. You can see that he does have a couple of steel tires in the back. You want to note the difference between the two because that will change the value of the truck.
And this is an Allison automatic. As you see, there's no stick shift. There's no stick shift in this truck. It's an actual automatic. It's a 10-speed, but it's an automatic transmission. Sometimes we can run, like if the driver or the owner of the truck says, I don't know what kind of automatic transmission. We know it's an automatic. We'll actually look up reference trucks. If the appraiser says, I can't get under the truck. I don't know what kind of tranny this is. One thing nice about trucks, you can get underneath.
You can fit. Oh, it's not Allison, it's an Eaton. It's an auto shift. So just going through, another important part is going to be your axle ratings. We touched on that a little bit inside. Your axle ratings will be a second sticker that's always right next to the VIN. Most trucks that are Class 8 trucks are about a 52,000 GVW. It's an industry standard. You're going to have a 12,000 front axle and 40,000 rear with two axles. And then if there are any unique features such as an APU, additional bunk options, if the vehicle owner has added an extended bunk unit, which is rare but it does happen, and then noting if there was an additional fuel tank added. Sometimes they only come with one. They do always have the option of adding a second tank or even a third tank depending on what kind of line haul they're doing.
Yeah, like on GVW, this on the tag here in the door, you'll see it. It shows that this is a 52,000 gross vehicle weight truck. Front axle rating is 12,000 pounds. The rear axle is 20,000 each. It's got a total GVW of 52,000. The weight itself, the weight of the truck itself is 23,586 pounds. So 52,000 less 23,000 is how much this truck you can set on the back of this truck. So 30,000 pounds.
Yep.
There you go. So let's see, what else? Now, if you want, so the ID, we go over, like I said, we're gonna fill out the VIN, we're gonna get the mileage, we're gonna get the options. We see it's an automatic. Not many options inside a truck other than, a trim pack. This is an Eagle. This has got the Eagle trim package. It's a 9400i Eagle trim package. Transmission, we'll ask the driver, rebuilt, yes, no. If it's an outer frame, we might ask for receipts. We might suggest because we look at it like if Ronald says if this engine was all greasy, if the appraiser, the owner says, oh, I did an in-frame rebuild on this thing, and it's all greasy, we might question it. I don't know if this thing has had a rebuild. We might request, you need to provide receipts. We'll put that in our report to you.
Trust but verify.
Trust but verify, But we can see, like in this, even though this engine looks kind of dirty, we can tell that it's actually pretty clean for a
million miles.
For a million miles. So it had some work done to it. If it had never been touched. Not saying that truck engines won't go a million miles. They certainly will. I think some up to 2 million miles.
After overhaul,
yeah.
Push it up to 2.
Yeah. So yeah.
This it was at 641.
Mm-hmm. 641?
Yeah, 641. What?
There, so we'll be able to tell if, and that's what you'll see on our report. If we say, we kind of question if it's been rebuilt, and we'll say before we run the evaluation in-frame rebuild request, we're requesting receipts from the owner to verify it. Front axle wheels, these are aluminum. Obviously you can tell aluminum versus steel wheels on the back. Aluminum versus steel makes a difference. We'll note on this condition sheet, front wheel aluminum. The tire size, we'll get the tire size 275/80, 22 R5. The condition, we'll use a tire gauge on this, or us appraisers have been doing a long time, we use our fingers, so that's 70% worn, 70% worn. So front tires, you'll see on trucks a lot of times retreads. Retreads are common on heavy trucks.
Can't use them on the front.
But you can't use them on the front. That's right. So steer tires, you'll see that on an estimate. 2 front tires. Let's say if the truck went off road, lost, they popped a couple of tires, damaged 2 front tires, damage 2 of the rear tires on the front axle. So we might have 2 brand new BF Goodrich 275/80R 20s, 50% wear on the tires. But they're steer tires. You can see on our estimates, steer tires, so they got to be no retreads. Now on these, if these tires blow out, retreads by Department DOT, they're okay with retreads on the back. So those tires on retreads, what's a retread? $250 right now?
$250.
Yeah, so retreads are okay on the back and on trailers too.
Yeah.
So this is where we mark, where, if they're new, so forth, axle rating, single, tandem. Like this truck, obviously, you see over here, number of rear axles. This is a tandem, obviously. Some trucks, they're both drive axles. Some trucks, just one is a drive axle, then the other one is basically just it's a tag axle. It's just for weight purposes. This truck is...
Should be a dual drive.
This is this is a dual drive, because I can see this has got a drive shaft going between this axle and that, so that's a twin drive. So that's gonna make a difference on the value. Continuing, let's see, exterior features, double frame, bucket boom, trailer body options, fuel tanks. Obviously, fuel tanks make a difference. Semi trucks have, commonly they'll have class 7, class 8 trucks. They have two fuel tanks. There's going to be a tag on these tanks that will show the capacity.
It's probably a little worn. It's probably a 120-gallon tank.
So what also will make a difference, now this truck doesn't have aerodynamics. You'll see a lot of class 7, class 8 trucks going down the road. They've got those real nice skirts that go down the side. This fuel tank is still there. The battery box is still there, just to have shrouds for aerodynamics. Same thing with the trailers. You'll see those side skirts. But we're gonna, when we do the condition and options list, we're gonna mark everything that the truck has so we can evaluate it properly. Let's see, tarp system, 5th wheel. The 5th wheel
should be an air slide.
This is an air slide.
Yeah. You have your airline here.
Yeah, I don't think we need to disconnect. You guys have all seen trucks on the hook before. They've got the big 5th wheel plate. Got the big 5th wheel plate. The kingpin on the trailer, just like a pin that slides, and you've all seen plates before. They got the slot up the middle. They back up and locks in. The kingpin attaches to the 5th wheel. Very commonly, a truck will go off-road, go off the side of a embankment or something. Truck will get damaged. The trailer might not be damaged as much, but it'll damage the kingpin. Could sometimes rip the kingpin off or damage the underside of the trailer where it sits on the plate. What else? Let's look at the motor. So now, a lot of drivers might say, I've got a Detroit. Our appraiser has to verify it. We usually ask our appraisers, hey, get a shot of the VIN plate. Get a shot of the VIN plate. Here, you're younger and stronger. Get up there, son. See, there's a VIN plate up on the top of that thing. We like to get a shot of it because looking at this, it's yellow, and I see it's a cat motor because the oil filter or the fuel filter says cat. But we like to verify. We always tell an appraiser, don't just, if the driver says, I got a Detroit 3120, you need to check, make sure. Because if this motor was a Detroit, the truck would be worth a few $1,000s more. So it's a little bit more complicated, obviously trucks, to get all the right conditioning. That's why the costs involved when you get an appraisal on a truck versus an auto, there's a lot more that goes into properly evaluating a truck. We got a VIN plate on it?
It's on the other side, yeah.
The transmission, now if we can't get to the transmission, we see that it's an automatic, and so we'll reference the appraiser, say, I can't find a VIN tag, or I can see it's an automatic, but I don't know what kind of automatic. We can reference what automatics came in a 97 or 2007 International, and we'll say, okay, it came with an Eaton 10-speed. We'll ask driver, it's a 10-speed. We'll document that. So that's about it for the condition rating. Now, for the condition of this truck, plug your ears, Ronald. I don't want to. It's a driven truck. It's made some money, right? Yeah. Yeah. It's clean inside, nice. Average condition, you'll see like this. He's got some duct tape on the. We're not going to really call this interior, poor by any means, just because we see duct tape. We see the seats are really nice. The interior, it's a driven truck. We try to be realistic on condition. Just average. It's average for the year. So when we, if you're settling a total loss with an insured or claimant, going over the condition ratings, they say my truck's worth a lot more. You want to see how it's evaluated. Well, the appraiser, they called it average. The paint condition on all these evaluation forms, they have paint condition, interior condition, engine, mechanical condition. We'll rate it, and we try to give the benefit of the doubt to the vehicle owner. So, if we see some duct tape right here, we might see a little crack right here. It's average condition for the year of the truck. CB, every trucker's got to say, Ronald, where's your CB? You don't have a CB. What kind of trucker are you? Yeah. So, and that makes a difference because, a lot of trucks will ask. You'll see, like in trucks, I mentioned earlier in the class, if you look through the door, you see that little mirror pointing down. So if there's somebody that wants to, needs some money, wants to do a little bit of insurance fraud, they'll get really close to Ronald when he's making a right-hand turn. Well, those mirrors, they can see if somebody is, parked right next to them. Yeah, big blind spot in trucks. It's hard to see. Unfortunately with trucks, when you get in the if we got time, you guys should all sit in the cab to actually see, look in the mirrors, see how big the blind spots are. When a person is claiming against a truck, so I don't know how the guy didn't see me. We get in the cab of one of these things with a 53-foot trailer, and you see.
You can see real quick.
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, you can see really quick how people get underneath the truck. So. All right, so now let's look at the damage. We'll go over the we'll go back to the, we looked at the condition, average, this is a sleeper. Now what we would do, this is a common style sleeper. I mentioned earlier, we tell appraisers, measure from the front bumper to the back of the sleeper. This is a standard size sleeper for an International.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is...
probably 60.
Yeah, it's a 60-inch, so old damage. So if the loss, here's what we're gonna do. If we're writing this, if ProSight gives us the claim, right front damage, I see there's old damage here. I'm going to mention this to you. Old damage here. In the event that this truck was a total loss, we're going to mention the condition. You see the paint is deteriorating, a little bit of old damage here. We'll look around the whole truck to see if there's any other damage. Yeah, paint's kind of deteriorating, so we would give it on the scale there. Yeah, we've got poor, below average, average. I might say in the paint of this, it's a little below average for the year. So this paint shouldn't be delaminating like that. Okay, let's look at the estimate. Okay. Let's look at the damage, how we wrote this. Now, it was just ironic that you wrote an estimate for the right side and you brought us damage on the right side of the truck. Okay, number one truck estimate. This estimate, this is actually written on a 9400, same year, make, and model. Zach wrote this estimate not knowing if this truck had any damage on it, but ironically, it does have some of the same damage. So here's the claim for the right front. Here's how, if I'm the estimator, here's how I'm going to write this. Well, I'll let you. It's actually pretty close to what you have, so I'll let you explain your estimate. How are you going to write this as an appraiser? As an appraiser,
you're going to look and you're going to assess the damage. Obviously, like John said, you're going to separate old damage from what's actually related based on the facts of loss. Looking at this.
On that note, as adjusters, it's very helpful as an appraiser When we go out, the first thing that we're going to look at is the facts of loss. So it's very important to use the adjuster or your FNOL, first notice of loss. Put that down on our assignment sheet because we're going to look at that. The vehicle owner, the driver, they might say one thing, oh, it was down the entire right side. You talk to them and say it's right front, because there could be damage down the right side. We need to kind of hone into that, you know, exactly where the damage is, because we'll put on the report, because if we see damage down there, we're going to say, you know, that damage over there doesn't look related to this. We'll write an estimate for both, and we're going to put in our report damage on the side. We wrote an estimate for the damage on the front and also on the side. However, we separated it into two different estimates. Damage on the side doesn't appear to be consistent with the facts of loss provided. It's good to always let us know the facts of loss and as detailed as possible.
Absolutely. So when you're writing an estimate, you always go from the bumper and move backwards. All estimating platforms will go by default from the front moving towards the back, and that's how you're going to assess your damage as well. So with this impact, you can see that the bumper was clearly hit, and it broke the bumper, so there's no chance of really repairing this, especially when you take into consideration the age of the vehicle. In this particular example, we found an aftermarket bumper for $600 that just happens to already be on the estimate. So we'd go ahead and we'd replace the bumper. And then looking at the damage on the hood, a lot of the estimate also corresponds with how we'd repair this. So looking at the right fender, you're obviously going to have to repair this, and this is actually a repairable hood. If this crack had gone all the way up and spidered over on top of this fender, then you probably consider replacing the fender. And you can see a line here that this is actually a 3-piece hood. So you can remove the hood, heat it up, and actually break the fender off completely so you don't have to replace the whole hood. And what you'll find is most shops will try and sell you the whole hood by default because it's easier for them. So you always want to make sure, if it is a 3-piece hood, that you separate the fender versus the entire hood.
I'll chime in here real quick. Very commonly like this, like we see damage right here. You report the facts loss right front. I see damage right here. Does that damage look related to this? It's not related. But I might, you know, the driver's going to be here. Hey, Ronald, that's all the damage right here? And Ronald's going to say, yeah, that's part of it too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right? Yeah, yeah. Is that part of it too? So I might note, well, Ron, you know, I try, as an appraiser, those of you who've been appraised, you try to, you know, to be realistic with the vehicle owner. Well, I don't know, Ronald, if that really looks related. That doesn't look related. Is that really related? I don't think that's related. No, that's not. Okay, see, he admitted it.
Right there.
It's not hard to get the truth out of the insurance.
Fender will be about $500 for the parts cost, about 8 hours of labor and 3 to 4 hours of refinish. Versus the entire hood, if you're going to replace the entire hood, you'll be looking somewhere around $2,500 for the hood, about 10 hours of refinish, and then to remove and detrim everything, probably another 6 hours of labor. Yeah. So it's going to be about a third of the cost.
It's significant.
It's a pretty big difference.
Yeah, yeah. And trucks, and of course, hoods on it's all Class 7, Class 8 trucks, fiberglass hoods, with the exception there are some Peterbilt's 379s. They have aluminum hoods. I don't think any of them are steel. They're all aluminum.
They're all aluminum.
Yeah. Fiberglass primarily hoods, with the rest of the body constructed out of aluminum panels, and then with fiberglass toppers. So go ahead and continue with the estimate.
So going through, as we talked about R&Ing items, there are going to be several things we're going to have to remove to repair this fender. The grill, even though it has unrelated damage, the grill will have to be removed. We'll have to R&I that because when we're going to paint and blend the fender, we're going to have to go all the way to the edge. And we don't want to get overspray onto the grill. The headlamp, obviously, the corner lamp here is damaged. That's going to be replaced. The headlamp, the mounting is more than likely damaged. It looks like it's kind of just Mickey Moused in there to keep the truck driving, so we'll want to replace that. And then you can see on the other side that it does actually have a headlamp bezel, and that's broken and completely missing, so we'll want to replace that as well.
So this repair time, you'll see that there's cracks inside here. Mm-hmm. If you're an estimator, what's your estimated time on that? Or replacement? It appears to be repairable. Fiberglass is very easy to repair, just so you guys know. You've worked in truck shops, but if I was negotiating this with you as a truck shop, I'd say
put 8 hours on
Yeah,
it?
I'd give them 8 hours. Give them 8 hours repair time. Now, if that truck shop said, I got to replace this.
No.
No, I can't do that. Well, how about we replace the fender?
No. The only reason
No.
that a shop could justify replacing this fender is if the interior reinforcement was damaged. If the interior reinforcement is damaged, then you're gonna have to peel it off, and in that case, you're gonna break the fender. And it's just an unfortunate cost of doing business. And if you look closely, right behind the headlamp, you can see that it's actually separated. The entire reinforcement that holds that hood together and to that hood pivot is compromised.
Yeah, see back here, there's a crack right there. So might opt to, yeah.
So looking at that and taking all that into consideration, there's no way that we're gonna be able to correctly repair the fender without compromising another portion of the hood.
So that's when it's negotiable. Still might write it, a shop might still say, well, I tell you what, I got to do some work on the inside. Give me an extra 3-4 hours to work with it. I can patch it up. It's always questionable.
Yeah.
Or shops say, I got to replace it. It's subjective, But if they say I want to replace the whole hood, different story, but repair versus replace, that's where the negotiation comes in.
Yeah.
You want the repairs to be done right. Well, so we've got how we wrote this, the headlamp, the front bumper, aftermarket or recondition, bezel, repair time. Well, if we were out in the field, here's the difference. If we were out in the field, if we meet Ronald at his terminal city, or his shop, so we're gonna write it for repair. Even though we might say, it might need to be replaced as an appraiser, I'm still gonna write it for repair, until I'm not the one repairing it, but based on my experience and prevailing repair shop methodology, it looks repairable to me. Might go to a shop, they might need to replace, and I'd be okay with that if they can further justify. We're always going to write it at where we think it can be replaced, rather than say, just replace it. We won't do that. So,
Right.
And our quality control department, they catch, if we have an appraiser that writes something that say, well, it's probably going to need to be replaced, but it's questionable to write for replace. Our quality control department will hold a file, kick it back to the appraiser and say, write that for repair. Until it's in a shop, it's questionable. So moving on in the estimate, you might, once you go through and explain the different R&I or the, we don't have a fender extension on this.
We do, but it's not damaged.
Okay.
So if you kind of move down our estimate here, we wrote some fictitious damage on the wheel and tire. There isn't any on this that's related to anything, but we could, in theory, state that, okay, the bumper got pushed back into the tire, rubbed the tire, it's absolutely destroyed the sidewall, and it nicked the wheel. Aluminum wheels are really inexpensive. They're really easy to find. They're about $225. And the tire we'd replace with pretty heavy betterment due to the wear.
Yeah.
And anytime you have an impact to the front wheel or tire, you normally want to write for a front end alignment. Because if you knock something out of whack and you put a brand new tire on it, you're going to destroy a brand new tire, and now you have an upset vehicle owner. So it's always easier to preemptively just spend the 2 hours on the estimate and allot the shop some time to do a front end alignment. Moving down, we wrote that this fender extension was damaged and required replacement. I think we found this aftermarket. Yeah, we found this aftermarket. And normally if you have certain components, such as a fender extension, normally they're so inexpensive that you just replace it. If you look at the cost of replacing this fender extension, if you had a crack that was 4.5 hours of repair, there's no point in repairing it.
Right.
We should just replace it.
Like this fender extension, for example, is $270 plus an hour and a half labor. So yeah, I mean, if it had a chunk out of it like this, let's say it was missing a piece, you could repair it. It might take 5 or 6 hours. At $85 an hour labor rate, doesn't make sense. So that's where the repair replace decision comes into. I don't think you had anything on the cab. Let's talk about how these cabs are repaired.
Cab repairs are very debatable depending on who you're talking to.
These are all aluminum, by the way. These
all
are aluminum. And there is kind of, and I'm sure in the past, aluminum cars are becoming more and more aluminum components on autos now. Trucks have always been aluminum, the cabs.
Yeah.
And again, Zach, he was a body man himself on trucks. He ran a truck body shop, and a lot of truck shops say, you can't repair aluminum. You can repair these. Aluminum doesn't have a memory. So all cars that are steel, you see body man, they'll tap out a fender, and of course then you have to put a little bit of filler over it. I mean, on a car, you can, something the size of a dinner plate, a dent on a quarter panel, this big that's sunken in a few inches, you can fix that. It's steel. Aluminum you can't straighten because aluminum doesn't have a memory. So aluminum damage, if it's small, like this is an aluminum panel, aluminum's very thin. If it's got a dent in this, say a $50 size, it can be repaired.
You can fill it.
Yeah,
you can easily fill it.
Yeah, you could fill it. There's aluminum filler, all metal, composite resin they'll use to fill these. So, if you see a dent this big on a truck and they've got this panel to replace, $500, question it. It's okay. It's like, why are you guys replacing it? Well, it's aluminum. You gotta replace it. No, it's a small dent. It can be repaired.
Especially when you take into consideration, anytime you're replacing a panel on a cab like this, the entire interior has to come out. You see all these rivets are going to have to be drilled individually and removed from the inside out.
Yeah.
So you're looking at an additional 10 to 12 hours to remove the interior before you start even working on the truck.
Right.
So you can always push back repairs on aluminum. If it's torn and there's a hole in it, obviously, you can't really do much about that. I've seen...
Like in your experience when you were repairing trucks and working in a truck shop, how big of a dent can you repair? And probably...
By just filling it, I'd say about half the size of your fist you can fill.
Yeah.
If you have something that's about the size of your palm, you can pull with a slide hammer. And what a slide hammer is, you actually weld a small rod onto the dent, and you have a weighted hammer and you slide it back and it'll actually pop the aluminum back out.
Yeah. You still have to put a little filler over the top of it, but aluminum is repairable.
So. Aluminum is very repairable. So
on a panel like this, I know you don't have it on the estimate. Yeah, if this panel needed to be replaced, let's say this damage continued down the side, this panel was damaged past repairability.
This is a sleeper panel on it.
Is there a cap?
Second page. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Replace the whole side.
Yeah, so we can see this is a 60-inch sleeper on the second page of that estimate. This is a 60-inch sleeper. The side panel. So the side panel, that's the side panel.
You have the side panel and then the transition panel.
Transition panel. Transitioning from the cab to the door. So the cost of this panel right there is $312, 3.2 hours labor time. And then if you note, and then he's got the side panel here, $743 for this panel. 6 hours labor, so it seems pretty reasonable. 6 hours for this, 3 hours. But then he's also got R&I the interior, 10 hours, in order to drill out all these rivets. So.
And a lot of times, if you have a cargo door, luggage door, or a separate entry door, that won't come pre-cut. So you'll have to allot an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, depending on what it is, to cut that hole. Same thing if you have a vent window up, or a peep window up top, or if you have a small vent on the side, you'll have to allot time to cut out all those exterior components for fitment.
Yeah. And here's another, again, Zach used to work on trucks, manager of a truck shop. Here's the reality, when push comes to shove, when it comes to negotiation, this panel right here, what's the time for these two panels? It's 6 hours. Here's 3.2 hours of labor, not including paint. Paint is separate. 3.2 and 6 hours. 9.2 hours of labor to change these two panels, interior and R&I. So 19.2. You as a body man, how long would it actually take you to replace these two panels, pull the interior out, replace these two panels? 19.2 hours, probably 13 hours.
The interior will come out in 2 hours. Hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on what's in there, if it's a double bunk. And then replacing those panels, you're gonna grind off all the rivets in an hour and literally kick the panel off.
Yeah. So, and then putting it back on, so it's database time. We don't determine these times. These are database out of Adjust Right. So it's a time and motion study of PPG where these times come from. But the reality is they're always padded. You know, they're always padded. So it's just how, same with cars, you know. I used to own a body shop. I ran body shops for a long time. Commonly, to replace a quarter panel, it gives you on a
13 hours.
Yeah, 13
14
hours, 14 hours. The reality, it's all said and done, it takes about 6 or 7 hours. So, you know, in shops, they want a nickel and dime. It's like, you're getting enough. We're paying the fair amount, trust me. So, you know. Anyways, all right, so
that's why we cap our
any
shop
questions
supplies.
on the truck or the components of the truck? We talked about aftermarket, OEM. When you see an estimate, it's got aftermarket versus new. Like if we have on the just so you know, aftermarket LKQ parts, the different, like a front bumper on this truck, aftermarket's available, reconditioned is available, used or LKQ is available. But certain parts, used parts or aftermarket parts would never be applicable. Like this side panel, you're not going to get a dismantler to cut off the side of you'll never find this part used or aftermarket. There's no aftermarket aluminum panels, so we have to go OEM on something like that.
Yeah, when it comes to replacing LKQ parts, if you can unbolt it, it's probably going to be good. Something like a fender that's glued on, you'll never use an LKQ part. You'll break it trying to take it off. Same thing with the panels. They're not meant to come off. They're riveted on there. But things like fuel tanks, there is always a fuel tank available.
Yeah.
There is always an LKQ fuel tank available. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise.
Yeah. If it's bolted on, you can get an LKQ. If it's welded on, riveted on, LKQ probably isn't the way to go.
You're gonna have to use OEM.
All right.